All right, guys, so there's this report going around, and while it's not coming from Variety or The Hollywood Reporter or Deadline, the sources that I usually trust to be about as solid can be, this is coming from a source called Puck, and Puck has been breaking some stories recently. I've really honestly never heard of this source before the past few weeks, but it's honestly just to preface this discussion that we're about to have about Warner Brothers, about Superman, and about the pressure that's on this film. I want to put out there that even if the sources that this outlet is claiming to be citing, it all doesn't end up being true, and whatever, this isn't a reliable thing, whatever. I want to say that the things that this source is saying, right, the kinds of things that they're confirming, they're espousing, I think are true regardless of what the source is. Like it's like saying, for example, leaked source says Avengers Endgame is perhaps the culmination of the MCU from the Infinity Saga. It's like, yeah, I mean, sources say that, internally they view Endgame as the end of the Infinity Saga. It's like, of course, sure. Even if that internal source was completely made up and bogus, that's something we all know. And I think this is a similar case. But I want to read out some quotes here because I think that this is very interesting. So basically, this outlet has been citing sources, and it says that there is a lot of pressure within Warner Brothers. And it's interesting because you see Warner Brothers, for example, have huge hits like Barbie, right? But recently, they haven't been doing so well in terms of box office performance. For example, Joker Folie à Deux. There was another report that came out a while ago that said David Zaslav, who is the relatively new CEO of Warner Brothers, was furious at how poorly Joker Folie à Deux did at the box office. For comparison, the first Joker made $1 billion, which is insane. I frankly, as somebody who doesn't love Joker, so admittedly, I don't know, I try not to be biased, but maybe a little bit biased, I don't understand how that film made $1 billion, but it did. It did. Joker Folie à Deux, though, which was critically panned, and for me, I thought it was a confusing mess of a film, made only $200 million in comparison. And recently, Mickey 17, which also was a Warner Brothers film, is not doing so well at the box office. And again, Mickey 17, I just did my review of it. I didn't think it was terrible, and I definitely thought that there was a lot of fun stuff in there, but I mean, it has critical appeal. So even the fact that that film is not doing well doesn't bode well for Warner Brothers. So it's really, putting the pressure on. And on top of all that, right, David Zaslav has been very clear. He's been very upfront and almost cutthroat in a certain way. We talked about a long time ago, many episodes ago on the Access Blockbusters Pod, about Batgirl's cancellation. And I said at the time, look, it might make financial sense, but it's the messaging. It's the kind of cutthroat way that he's going about it that I don't know, it may not bode well in the future. He's canceled films like Coyote vs. Acme, the Looney Tunes film, and Batgirl. And it's just that kind of mentality, right? So again, it's all sort of building this pressure of we got to deliver quality. And apparently, according to this source, it's putting all the pressure on Superman. It is putting all of the pressure on the upcoming Superman film. This is a quote from that outlet. This is what it says. Quote, an essential element of the stock price is believing that the IP of DC is meaningful. David Zaslav bet big that they can show the world that the DC IP can have real value. Superman is the first movie. That will set the tone. They have a tremendous amount riding on it. So again, like I said before, news, water wet, right? This isn't news, but I think it's interesting that this article and all these other outlets that are pointing to this article and these sources and whatnot are saying what I think is true. It's putting context to a lot of different things that are going on here. It's not just that Superman is a tremendously important film for Warner Brothers just because it's a big comic book movie on one of the most important cinematic figures ever, right? Superman. It's Superman. It's not just that. It's not just that it's launching the DCU, right, for the first time after the, let's face it, guys, the dismal failure of the DCEU to launch itself and the eventual collapse of it. And I don't say that with any joy, by the way. And I wanted to like more of the DCEU. I liked a little bit of it. So again, I think nothing would make me happier than to see the DCEU succeed, because I've been saying this before. People in the comments have been like, Marvel is better, DC's better, Marvel sucks, DC sucks. And I'm like, why? What's the point of that? Let's have great movies for both. I love that the Batman is awesome. I love the Batman, and Infinity War is awesome, right? For example, I love that Wonder Woman is awesome and Thor Ragnarok is awesome, right? So I think it's better when both are succeeding. But it's not just that. It's not just that it's launching a new cinematic universe on top of the failure that was the DCEU. Critically, financially, you name it. And I'm not even talking about my own personal feelings about the films. I want all films to succeed for the most part, with some exceptions for the odd case. But and again, we won't get into that in this segment. But On top of that, the context that's provided here is that it now has basically all of Warner Brothers writing on it. And it's interesting, right? Because, I think that the amount of pressure, Zaslav, for what it's worth, you can say he's made the right financial decisions, you can say all these sorts of different things, and that's totally fine. I think what he's doing, though, is saying, okay, we're putting our chips in, we're going all in, and we're saying Superman can revitalize the DCU. And I've said this before, if Superman is not received super well, no pun intended, it's not that the DCU is dead on arrival, right? Creature Commandos has come out, and I don't think that, Creature Commandos could have sucked, and I think people would have still been like, yeah, but let's wait till Superman. If Superman doesn't do well, and I really hope it does, but if it doesn't do well critically, like if Superman doesn't do well critically, I think the DCU is in a huge hole. But on top of that now, it seems like they're putting the pressure on themselves with the recent failures like Mickey 17. And again, Mickey 17 could still make a lot of money at the box office. So I'm saying quote-unquote failures. But Joker Folie à Deux was a box office failure. And it looks like if Superman doesn't make a lot of money either, it's not going to look good for Warner Brothers. I'm not saying that from a personal point of view. I think if Superman makes $400 million and is received really well, that's fine. I think that's great. But if it really doesn't do well, then it's going to put a lot of pressure on Warner Brothers. So I think this is something, I would file this as something to monitor, and we'll see. We'll just have to see how Superman does. I'm just hoping for a great film, but there are going to be all sorts of ramifications based on what happens with that film. Guys, what do you think of these outlets that are reporting that there is a ton of pressure on the Superman film from inside Warner Brothers that it needs to succeed? Let me know in the comments down below.